Now we are recording, and I'm gonna share the screen. What is the share? I guess share shows up now. I'm gonna go over here and shift H. Local time improving to 8:45, so we need to get started. We need to get started. Good. We need to get started. So how do I know that you guys can hear? Can somebody say something, please?
We can hear you.
Hello.
You're good. Thank you so much. It looks like people can hear me, so I'm going to say that we're recording, and I am going to try to establish the connections again. I'm in chat says something. Good. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to say get rid of the clock, and there's some here, and this is the note that I want to develop today, and I'm going to close the chat as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the participants. There are 5 of you. Great. No, 5 of us. One of us is me. So there are 4 of you, let's say. 4 people remotely. Nobody's in this room. Everything is fine. Now, I do have Christian S. Good. And then I have Christina. And then I also have Blake and Ahmad. So here's the first thing that we need to establish. I'm gonna take, I'll write the attendance a little bit later. Now we are recording, so this will be in the recording for today. We have a slight change of priorities, but I'll show you in a second why. So I'm gonna go C to 9. And if I click here, I'm gonna say today is the 19th, and if I click, I have to do the quantum teleportation today. I think that's fine. Yesterday, we did super dense coding, but I still owe you the basic circuit and perhaps even the calculation. So I put stuff in here, and I said, here's the plan for at least the first half of the lecture today. And great, the plan is essentially a notebook that says, if you would like to do super dense coding, then you will have 1 of 4 cases, and eventually, after you examine them all, like I did in the qubits, there must be a way to create a circuit that says this is everything. These are the 2 qubits which are entangled between Alice and Bob, and then this is the preparation of the state is what she wants to send. So in this case, you would assume that these are classical inputs. I put them as qubits because they will always be 0 or 1. And the preparation of state is what makes me want to write the function over here, because these x's might or might not be there, depending on how she wants to send 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, or 1, 1. And then you see how the circuit remains always the same, because these 2 gates are controlled by the input. And I'm not entirely sure. I think maybe this is it. Nothing is wider than this. And I could start saying, well, what's happening with the 4 qubits in the output? And so I can measure them. And I say, but the ones that I am interested in are going to be the ones to the left. So I modify this and I say, honestly, the first 2 lines are supposed to be classical, and nobody is interested in those because we're not sending stuff classically over those. These are just her way of controlling the 2 control gates. And then Bob only has access to the entangled qubits. So how many qubits is Alice sending to Bob? Just 1. This one here. The only thing is that, so there's a theorem by a guy Olevo that says that if you have 1 qubit, you can only send 1 bit of information. But we have a pair of entangled qubits here. So the synergy here is that her qubit and his qubit are entangled, and though she is modifying and transmitting only 1 qubit, somehow the synergistic aspect of the entanglement contributes to the EPR pair, which is Q2, Q3, to actually carry some information so that she, in essence and effectively, is communicating 2 bits of information. So if we measure, then we get what we expect, and then we run this several times. So I'd like to develop this with you slowly so we can be sure of what's happening. So the idea behind the entire class is that we would like to use extensively a system that we extended. And I first presented this in March in Minnesota at the APS March meeting. I said basically what you see in the qubits book, that the system is extremely effective and you can use it as it is without any coefficients. It's just blobs, white and black. And you are going to be able to cover a lot of material, specifically the things that we've covered already, which is all the little concepts that we have in the very beginning, superposition and entanglement, if you want, interference, phase in this limited way, just plus or minus, that means pi. And then after we discuss quantum gates of 1 qubit and 2 qubits, with a few gates that we know, we basically can write circuits for phase kickback and then for bursting Vazirani, Deutsch-Georgia, and then Grover, and now superdense coding. All right. So yes, we can talk about these slower, and we will, and we want to write the circuits and then redo the calculation and so on. But the point here is that we had a plan, and the plan included to take this system to the extreme, to the extent of what we can do. So we have 4 big cases of quantum advantage that we just presented. Now we have a problem. We would like to extend it so that we can capture quantum teleportation, and then we would like to play the game of quantum telepathy. So the guest lectures notwithstanding, our plan was, clearly cut and established. And so we are now in front of teleportation, and we're also in front of which quantum telepathy game have we chosen? We've chosen GAC, even though you can go back to the lecture that we got in the first week, which was on the 20th, I think. And if you click on the guest lecture, at some point you get to CSH.
Have instructors sort of bring these concepts to
Game.
the classrooms.
I'm just going to come up over here and I'm going to say you have CHSH game somewhere in here. There you go. See? And so that's the game that he's introducing in the very beginning, which I'm going to say block. I'm not entirely sure what I want from here. It's the game that we should present next week. And I explained that the CHSH game is very valuable, but it has a statistical component. So you can look into the books that you guys have from the Terry Rudolph Q's for quantum. And our choice of a quantum telepathy game is the GAC game, which has the distinct advantage that you will win every single time. Then you don't have to play it a significant number of times so you can get a proportion of at least 85% or around 85%, which is beating the 75% that we normally do in the classical setting. You don't. All you have to do is to play it once or twice or 3 times, and you will have exactly as many wins. And it's even better when you say, I am able to communicate to you the idea behind this, that if I were to calculate all cases, then I will end up with all of them wins. It's not that I got 3 times and I get 3 wins, but any number of times I would play this game, I would get the same number of wins. The only problem is that in a quantum teleportation, I have to deal with any qubit. And in the last one that we just discussed, I need to move to the other 2 bases. So if you go through this and you say, I understand that we introduced the idea behind breaking even. I want to consider the controlled Hadamard. I'm sorry, it doesn't fit into the mystic state formalism. We know why we did we emphasized the reason that Teddy wrote in his website from the beginning. From the moment the book was published, that was there already. And then we said, what's the simplest gate that would break that? And that's controlled Hadamard. And I said, it's easy for a student to say, but controlled Hadamard, man. It's a controlled something, which you have a lot of control knots, and the Hadamard, which you have a lot of peak boxes, right? So why can't I do it? And at that point, I guess a student could say, but I believed in this formalism, and I know you told me that I can't, but now I want to. So how can I do it? And the idea is you really should be putting numbers in there, okay? So when we go into breaking even here, suddenly you can ask questions that sound interesting to computer scientists. How could you take the square root of naught? You think, oh, that naught is basically a gate. How can I take the square root of a gate? It's just the property or the operator of naught. If I could put 2 gates next to each other, it's almost like I multiply them. Then the 2 gates, identical, multiply because each gate is a matrix. Each gate being, that gate multiplied by itself produces naught. Well, then the gate itself is a square root of naught. Yes.
I think at that point you really should go to the unit circle because the calculation is simple Pythagoras. And I guess if people know Pythagoras, they know, so. Then
I
you
agree with
can-
you.
Yeah.
And he says, because you heard, because the microphone is properly set up here. He says, go to the unit circle, and I say, sure, what about square root of z?
Yeah, I mean, of course, then you will go to the complex number, but the basic, how we look at it in 2D and not in complex 2D, of course, it's the same. It's in the end, the Pythagoras holds. And even in
Exactly.
complex
So,
space.
In
So-
many ways, as the unit circle is helping us. So as we discussed last time, I said s squared is z. Can you prove that? What's square root of z? And that's going to be s. So then the question is, what is s? And s, how do you represent it? So s is going to have an I. And the reason I'm asking it is this thing over here, because I'm asking this on the previous question page, and then I say, if you ever had a paper version of this, and you were doing it at your table with a pencil, whatnot, and lots of other books around you, then you will end up writing. So it would be good by the time you turn the page to have a clear question, which is the thing that I'm asking over here, so you can go on the next one and hear the answer.
But what if you just first show, you will work with the not gate maybe, and then you just show it in the real case. And as long as they not ask, as long as the student comes up with this question, yeah, what is with this other case? Then you don't answer it, but when they come up, then they are interested to know, and then you explain about the complex space and that is a Hilbert space and so on, and then they're even more hooked, right? You wait till they ask questions.
That sounds fair. That sounds fair. My purpose is not to introduce square root of naught and square root of z. Where now, after we had to introduce the GAZ, we end up having colors and imaginary numbers.
Yeah.
And then you can come back and say, so wait a minute, what's square root of naught, what's square root of z, and so on. So the purpose here, this is a corollary, but something that, like you said, comes up because we have to play that game, and I don't want to play it statistically. Although, I mean, you could say, just forget it, it's in the book, let's do it like in the book. So we can do it like in the book. And I did it differently, and I'm going to introduce, I plan on having a circuit for the GAC game as well. And we scroll over teleportation, right? And then you remember that in the introduction of the break-even thing, I have a reason. What? W entangles state. Oh, is that complicated? No. Do I have a link to Waters' video straight to the W entangle gates? Yes, I'll show you in a second. Okay, once I accept that, I suddenly have two reasons to break even with formalism. I have this controlled Hadamard that shows up, but also the rotation. And the rotation matrix is somewhere in here, and you can see it. And again, it's of the kind, and I'm asking a very important question over here. If I give you a matrix, would you be able to tell me, looking at the matrix, if the matrix is R, for example, what's R of white, what's R of black? And the answer is, the two columns are going to give you those answers. Now you can say it, and now you can write it, because we are allowing complex coefficients. We're allowing the coefficients. Now, the whole purpose of this, once again, good point with the unit circle, and let them ask, and then they are hooked because they asked. It's not that you, it's like, we said this many times, in general, in school, students should be chasing knowledge, not knowledge should be chasing students, but we are basically chasing students with our knowledge. And at some point they get saturated, and it's difficult to continue that. So his point was absolutely well taken. And I'm gonna come back over here and I say, after I talk about rotations, this is really the topic for next week. This is the last topic in this class that we really have to do thoroughly. And this is the GAZ game. So in the GAZ game, there is a strategy. And the problem is, if the strategy is well explained in the conventional sense, are you able to do something in the mystic state formalism, extended as it may be? And the answer is, you want to eliminate these equations and come up with something that resembles this. I mean, maybe these are scaring you. They scare you and they say, I don't understand, and all these colors are frightening and whatnot. That's possible, okay? But at some point, you should agree that either this or that is something that you have to be comfortable with. And my point is, you can be comfortable with both. Because you have two, you actually can play with them until they're both in sync. So that's what I have to do. if I go into the GAC game. I have to introduce colors and I have to introduce this little thing, just this one, no more complex than I itself. And that's the class, all right? Now, the benefit of this, that if you say, okay, I want to play the game, show me that regardless of what we do, we are going to succeed. And there are two big cases. And the second case is this one over here, and the first case is this one over here. See, the first case says that you're going to have an even number of red circles, and 0 is over here, 2 is over here, 2, 2. The other one says you're going to have an odd case of 0 hued, red hued circles. That means red or pink, an odd number. So then you have 1 over here, then you have a pink over here, a pink over here, and a 2 pink and a red, which means 3 red-like circles. So this is what he does in his book, and this is what it looks like if we decide to do the GAC game. He doesn't do the GAC game, he does something else, entanglement and then CHSH, which is fine, that's the original breakthrough. And I come up over here and I say, what do you need to look into when you calculate all the possible states, which are not even that many? The conclusion is that you need to count circles that have a certain type of color, red or pink. And you will find out that regardless of how they come at the end of the measurement, you will get a state which will have that property. Therefore, you will always win the game. And that's your strategy. And we need to understand this. So now that's the entire course, okay? And I'm going to say that just for the conformity, I guess just because I said so, I'm going to go under 18 and I'm going to say, this is where John Watrous defines the W entangled state. Or you say, okay, I never seen this. You showed it to me in Wolfram demonstrations project, but you said Watrous. Maybe you can show me where. And if you click here, it takes you straight to see right there. It's exactly in the thing. And he says, it doesn't say much. I mean, I cut the sound and I'm still very confused as to what am I supposed to do with this control here. But the idea is that he says something like, you have captions. He says, this is also an important state. I really want you to see it. And the student would say, okay, you showed it to me. I want to do it with Misty state formalism because I want to do all of those that I see in an introductory course. All of them work out except for that one. And then you get into what exactly can I do to extend this? Okay, so we have this too. Now here's the thing that changes a little bit the priorities that we discussed. If I go over here and I go under what's new, I say that okay, next week on Tuesday before our guest lecture, that's not the thing. She's going to talk somewhere. This is where she's going to talk. So if on Tuesday people want to connect and she's in conversation with this guy, then then that's acceptable and available. Okay. And my thinking was, as I was striving,
was this the interview that you had linked in the class on Wednesday?
She is participating at the invitation of this guy in a webinar where she's going to talk about the current state of quantum computing and future prospects. Okay, so this guy is the host, and it's for this education board for Pakistan.
Okay,
but it's something that she announced and it's free, open to the public. And we have been in 2 lectures with her, and there's another lecture on Wednesday. So our lecture on Wednesday is still there, exactly the same. It's a private thing. It's not advertised. Only you guys can attend. But this is a public thing. And since she just announced it on her this morning on her Twitter, I thought, hey, let's check it, okay? And there's a link. You can go there. And I was thinking that Tuesday should be a day when I should meet with everybody. So instead of a lecture, we should send you guys here if you want to go. Or if you don't, then don't go. And meet everybody with me so that we have a nice, meaningful, consistent way of knowledgeable way of actually ending the course. So we don't have to move into the weekend or after whatever. But Tuesday is not good enough for that. We need to do something today. And that's the thing that I wanted to clarify. So I said that this is a paper that in May, almost like an afterthought. I really didn't have the time and I was traveling and I thought I was talking to Christian. Well, we thought that we should send some paper to, this is May, okay, so the class hadn't started. I was still recruiting, so we didn't know how many high school teachers we were gonna have. The purpose was still there, to create a faculty learning community in Indiana, and maybe in the US. So we sent this paper, which is really a super short little kibitza. And it's basically what I talked about at APS March meeting, where it wasn't published, just the abstract showed up on the website. Recorded and whatnot, but not a printed, published paper. And I said, I have a reason for this to be, I asked for this to be a talk, not a published printed paper. And this is the paper, and you can read it. This is the paper that goes through exactly everything we did in this class. This is a part of a larger process. The process is one that I guess I could show you, maybe I'll tell you, but every 10 years, ACM, IEEE Computer Science, and AAAI gets together, and for 2 or 3 years, they work out a new set of curricular guidelines for the world. I guess we can just go over here and say CS 2023. And I may have posted this in the What's New at the time before class started. And if you go, this is really the result. So they finally, it became official. And my connection with these people was, this is the task force, and this is everybody, but there are individual knowledge areas. And if you go into, they put quantum computing in architecture. This is the group of people in architecture. My purpose here was to be the liaison with the QEDC, which is the Quantum Economic Development Consortium, that I was the chair of the Workforce Development TAC back in 2021, for the sake of making sure that we include topics for quantum computation. And they were accepted. If you look at publications, we have is this, where is this? I'm just going to say, if you click here, that's the March 2023 CC in Toronto. And the purpose is, if we wanted to introduce in computer science a knowledge unit for quantum computing, how should it look? And I have a link to this page somewhere, and I paid extra for this to be open source. And if you click, you get the description, and that's the paper. So as soon as we published this, they said, but we need proof that this would in fact make whatever impact that you are claiming. So I'm going to come back to curricular practices. And then in addition to that and a few other papers, we actually wrote another paper, this one over here, that you can read, that says, well, here's what people in the QEDC said about our proposal. So proposal is visited here. And now these are the learning outcomes. And this is how they scored when people in the industry decided to tell us what they thought about this. And then these are those are topics. And this is the learning outcomes coming up now. Oh, where am I? Where am I? There are two. Okay, so then the first thing that I'm showing you over here is the topics. And you guys, very small information here is what topic that is. And then there is some information about some open-ended questions, answers. Then we have the discussion as to whether there was any statistical significant difference between companies with respect to some of the questions. And the hardware companies clearly identified themselves through their answers compared to the companies that were doing mostly software. And so there is some example over here. These are questions that we asked of experts, because our two outstanding questions were, what are we going to do about the quantum hardware lab in a computer science undergraduate program? And the answer is, right now, it's almost impossible. In 5 years, there may be something that is useful, and then there are some variations of options. And then in 10 years, things might just be completely different. So all we can say right now is that those will, in fact, be different from, I mean, they are important, we should pursue it, but it's not clear exactly how it will look what options we will have in 10 years. So we enumerate some and we say, let's wait, but these are what we are expecting, and these are the things that we could do with what we know now. So then what you're looking here is the learning outcomes. So for every learning outcome, there is a score, and this is how people voted. And then there is I think the detailed statistical analysis to see how these items relate, and there's factor analysis. And so in the end, we had 3 proposals. A very short 8-week class, that is the one that you are now experiencing. There's a semester-long class, that's the standard one, no lapse. And then there's a 2-semester sequence where we would include in that, and there's indication as to what books you can use to do the 8-week, 1 semester or 2 semester, where you would say, at all costs, I have to go and do the labs. And then that means that for a program, let's say like our masters, for example, which is an accelerated masters, that wants to be part of the 4+1 programs that we have currently, like you can do 4 undergraduates and then 1 year and you have a master's too, but in this case in QIS. You could acquire a lot of credits as an undergraduate for that master's program. And the idea is that while you're doing this in computer science or physics or chemistry or elsewhere in mathematics, then you would go and do most of the labs are in engineering here in Ladi or in physics. And we would include them at all costs. We also indicated that there is, so the idea was then, okay, can you do the curriculum mapping for this to prove that what you are suggesting, given the statistical analysis, is in fact rational, that is sensible? And I have a matrix over here that says, this is how I would prove that if I choose these topics, I would in fact cover all the goals that I have. I would in fact support them. So I build a matrix and I compare it with a few books that exist, and I draw a conclusion. This thing, quantum in picture, is a direction that is basically being developed right now. So it's not clear how we are going to include, but it's written over here, and I said we have to take it into account. All right, so we have made some impact at an international level on account, and none of these papers are written by just one person. There's always 3, 4, 5 people. My main collaborators are from Brazil and China. But as I said, I'm in a group with people from other places too, Ireland, several people from the US and so on, one person from Egypt. And so given this, we started this class with a very clear goal, if it was possible, we thought. Take the content that we have, which is this paper, which is really my presentation in March at the APS March meeting, and ask ourselves if it could be the foundation of a set of modules that could in fact support a faculty learning community in high school, for high school teachers. And at this point, you should have some opinion. No, it can't be done, or yes, it can be done. Yes, it can be done, and here's how it should be done. Or no, it can't be done, and here's why not. Or here's what you would have to change to make it. I said that we have promises and expectations. This is what we submitted. This is what Christian and I submitted, and I was late at night, because that means, you know, over here, and I had just come back from Arizona, and this was in Bloomington, so the time here was shortly after midnight. And I wrote this abstract, and I messed up Christian's name. His first name should be Christian, last name should be Scott, but I messed it up because in the email shows up Scott, Christian, and he was at night, and I had just come from Arizona.
It's considered 8 friends.
The URL over here is of the paper I just showed you. And this is the thing that you can read. So we have an abstract. Now, what I would like to show you is the conference that this was accepted. And what I wanted to say is that I would like to include as many of you as possible if you're interested. So who is interested to be a co-author, or who is interested to participate in any way. But right now, I'm interested in your opinion, and also if you want to be listed as a co-author. And then we have, say, next week to work out all the details. Although, to be completely frank and honest, all the details should be fixed today. That's the problem, because I'll show you in a second. Because I wasn't paying attention. Because they wrote back, they postponed, I mean, they kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and see, for example, posters are still being accepted, okay? And they wrote on Monday, so not today is Thursday, Friday, it's Friday. So I read it, I shared it with Christian and a few other people. I mentioned it in class, and I was thinking, we can do this Tuesday next week. No, we have to do it today. So if you go into Word, this is basically what I'm going to show you. Very briefly, this is the feedback that we received. So first of all, this is Monday night, all right? So Tuesday morning, I became aware that it was accepted Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, I didn't do anything about it. Friday morning today, I looked through this so I can tell people, let's do it Tuesday. Go to the Zoom for Pakistan, quantum, whatever, with Maria, and then let's do our meetings. Turns out we have to do it today. So the response was, great. Your paper, which is the remarkable effectiveness of a simple rewriting system. I hope you understand that the Mrs. formula is a rewriting system. But you have to also be, I guess, impressed by this, because at the foundation of computer science, we have rewriting systems. That's all we have. Lambda calculus is a rewriting system. Turing machines are a rewriting system. So that is a foundational concept and tool for us. And if we identify this tool as a foundational tool, the Mrs. formalism, that is in complete consonance with what we do in computer science from a theoretical point of view. So they said, look how they also are in trouble. So they say Bellevue, Washington, because this is the message from last year. This year it's in Montreal, but they didn't change everything in that message. They took the template from last year and they left some things from last year. So they have the same issue as everybody else. It says several tasks need to be completed before we can send this. So one thing that we can do is we know we have at least one person, one high school teacher, Christina, who said, I'd like to participate. That's excellent. The question is, who else wants to participate? And today I'm going to email everybody. By 2 p.m., everybody will have received an email message. I mean, whether you're listening to this and you're hearing it in the recording or now or whatever, this is what I'm going to
I will.
say.
I'll participate.
What?
I'll participate.
Great, great. So I'm going to say Christina and Carla, correct?
Yes.
Great. Then my goal is to change the list of authors, because I have to do it by July 19th. I have to update the public abstract. That's great, and I'm really happy. But I'm going to ask everybody, but that's perfect. So you know how this, as far as the high school teachers, is sponsored by the Center for Quantum Technology. So on behalf of that kind of effort, if we had the people who took this class be willing to communicate to this conference in September that this is what we did, this is what we think might work, and this is how we plan on using it in the classroom, then that I think would make the sponsorship meaningful. And they might be more likely to increase the amount of money next year or do something more spectacular or whatever. So public abstract and author list has to be finished today, okay? And so, for example, for Christina and Carla, who said, I would like to participate, all I am going to do is to make sure that I have the right name and the right affiliation, so that can be sent over to them. Then I will make sure that everybody else who wants to be part of this tells me today, and I include the correct name and the correct affiliation in what I'm submitting. As far as the abstract, I'm going to have to change it a little bit. And here's what it says. There are some instructions, and what I would like to show you is the reviews that we have received. There are 3 reviews. And I believe if we don't do anything, that's fine. But I think we should do something from the point of view of what our goal is. And so scroll down this, because I did this right before we started. So it was 8:40 when I did this today. And where is the submission? Review 1. So the review 1 is as follows. They are first required to summarize the paper and then make a decision. So the extended abstract is about the Mrs. formalism, which they call the quantum abacus first proposed by Rudolph. The abstract is about 2 improvements, specifically arbitrary qubits and arbitrary rotations. This would make an interesting talk, especially to overcome mathematical barriers. That's our point, and they repeat it in the sense, see, we read the paper. I find that the author gives an accurate account of the strengths and limitations of the formalism. I find the comparison with the ZX calculus at the end interesting, that different formalism can teach understanding in different ways. I would like to see further clarification on the universality claim on page 1. Is the author saying that MSF, the Mississippi State Formalism, is equivalent to sum over paths. If so, can the translation be provided explicitly? So I doubt that we can, first of all, I was going to get this done on Tuesday because I have to write 3 or 4 more pages for you, for this class. As we were going into Martin Laforet last chapter, and as he does mathematical notation, I was gonna say, now that we know this Mississippi State Formalism so well, how about I give you some parallels, which is exactly what this guy is asking, this person is asking. So we are going to have something indicating, if you take the postulates of quantum mechanics and you look at them through the Mississippi State Formalism, here's what you can say so that people who never want to study Mississippi State Formalism can be sure that this formalism is in fact complete and cover all possible cases. So I recommend more background provided as to what age and math level can students do the computations in the extended abstract. This should at least discuss the Virginia Tech paper where this was taught to high school girls. See, we have this, but not in this paper. The thing that we were talking about, high school girls, is Money or Tiger with Eddie Barnes and Sofia Economo. That's not part of this paper, but we can indicate. And if you look at the reference, I bet I mentioned that paper there. But in this paper, I don't have Deutsche. I don't have super dense code. I don't have Versi Vazirani. I don't have phase kickback because that was a different paper. So the second one says, the first one was accept. The second one says reject. And the reason they reject is because they say this should be a tutorial instead. So it says the paper presents an extension of Mississippi State Formalism that was initially presented in a tutorial last year. The content of the paper is interesting, but I would recommend that this is presented as a tutorial. So we had a tutorial last year. They say, let's keep it as a tutorial, finish the tutorial. I'll tell you what, a tutorial is better than a paper, but I didn't want to send it as a tutorial. A tutorial is better because you get an hour. With a paper, you get 15 minutes. So, of course, I'd like to have a large group that talks for an hour. But honestly, what I wanted this to be is just a talk saying, we all know about Mr. Formalism. Here's a bunch of slides. Let us tell you the conclusion and then take some questions and then stay in touch. So the reason this person says that it should be a tutorial rather than a talk is because it has so much detail, step by step, because it's a little mini qubitson. For a paper, it would be interesting in seeing data. So this is the part that where anybody who's teaching in a classroom should try to imagine what impact this might have. I mean, how did you feel when you learned this? Is there anything in it that you think is promising and why? At the beginning, that's what we have to do before we actually collect the data. So for example, I remember in March when we went to Portland and I distributed the books, Christina opened the book and she said, like in 3 seconds, she says, I already like that book, this book, on account of how the diagrams were presented. So I think that's a very valuable comment. Okay, of course, if I said why, and then please give me more detailed information as to why you think this will be attractive to your students, she could probably put some paragraphs in there. So says, I want to see data. And what we need to do, at least we have a plan to collect data, to tell them. As the authors claim, and responded to this approach in an 8-week course, and furthermore, where students face difficulties. So here's what we can do. We cannot say anything about how our students in high school will react to these classes, but you will likely be the people who will teach those. So you can tell in the paper or for this paper how you felt. So how you responded to this approach in the 6-week summer course, and where did you feel that you faced some difficulty? Because whatever is the way you perceive it is likely the way the students are going to also see it, at least to some extent, right? Because it goes through you and you are a filter, and of course you are enhancing it, but any difficulties that you identify are going to be addressed because you think that they should be addressed given your knowledge of your students, which nobody else has. And so this was a reject, saying accept it as a tutorial instead. And this one, the first one was accept. And it looked good. And this one, I don't know what it says, weak accept. And the weakness here is this. The proposed talk is a follow-up to a tutorial given last year, not in 24, 23. I believe the topic is appropriate and would be. However, the abstract, they say, reads like an email to the program committee. I absolutely agree. Because I didn't know how to say, so I said, as if I were talking to Brian, for example. Hey, Brian, this is why I want to submit this, or Mark. So, so then they say, you know, because the abstract reads like an email to the program committee, is basically unsuitable. So I would, first of all, perhaps because this is a talk, because I wanted it to be a talk, not a printed paper. But my goal was to validate the idea and use this as a draft making process. So we can then submit to the European Physics Journal as a printed copy in the journal. And that's why I keep avoiding printing it, because if we publish it, then we have to write a completely new paper for that journal. But if we don't publish it, then we can use it, because that's what we are refining the content. So we can then put it in the quantum education collection of the European Physics Journal. But that one is a tricky proposition, because if you take a paragraph from an older paper of yours, then immediately they reject it. They say you are plagiarizing. What are you plagiarizing? Your own paper. So what? Doesn't matter. You cannot. It has to be a completely new text, and I don't want to ruin the text. And that includes the abstract as well. So I would tentatively recommend inclusion, but telling the authors to resubmit an abstract. Now, if we have at least 2 people, hopefully we'll get more, we can work out an abstract that describes what I just talked about. That this is an activity that was endorsed by ACM, AAAI, and IEEE Computer Science, but also the CQT here in Indiana. And the goal is to create something that hasn't been created before. And then the fact that only 2 states in the US have quantum at the high school curriculum level, and that's Ohio and computation, and we have in Texas physics. So I think this is meaningful and unique. And I have to do something about this today. Now, if you say, what is an example of a paper that discusses quantum education? Here's an older paper, maybe a year old, by some of the people who may have reviewed our paper. And that's how it looks when it's published and printed. So that's my goal, the European Physics Journal. I mean, we can just decide that's not a good goal. But I mean, so far, that's the idea. Put together a nice abstract and go make a presentation with more authors that includes the people that have been part of this experience this summer in Montreal, and then write it up where it's completely new text compared to anything that we published in the past, and then send it to be included in the quantum education collection of EPJ quantum technology. So you can read here and you realize this is not how you teach, which is the Mrs. State formalism, or how you extend what's already been proposed, but rather what impact is this likely to make? And we should try to tell them where we are and what we think. As a matter of fact, it's not just our goal, it's the fact that you have in fact taken this class and you have an opinion of what the student perspective might be. So that's what I have to do today. So I have Carla and I have Christina, and then my question is, who else would like to be participating? So then anybody on this page is eligible, except for this row. This row is fictitious. So I'm going to write to everybody. We have 3 graduate students. We have a number of undergraduate students, and we have a number of high school teachers. And I hope that by the end of today, along with Christian, we'll have a finished abstract that reads well, that includes the CQT and our faculty learning community purpose. Because if you go here, you realize that the abstract that I have currently is almost entirely the abstract from March. So I said, given the content that we have, this is the abstract that I have in the paper that they have read, all right? But the thing that they complained about was this abstract. And they said this one here reads like an email to the committee. And that's absolutely true. I just didn't know what they want for an abstract for a talk only, which is a new category this year. And that concludes my announcement and why today, Friday, July 19th is important. Are there any questions?
I mean, I'm not a teacher, I'm a PhD student, I just don't know how to contribute really to this, because, I mean, Yes, I learned in the course. Well, quantum computing, I learned a lot, but I don't see the view of a high school teacher, right? I learned this for myself.
I understand. So let me clarify something. I'm interested in people who would like to participate. So if you say, I'm not entirely sure how I can participate because I don't have enough exposure to teaching in a classroom, then the question is, would you like to be listed as a co-author? And read a paper and give your opinion as to what should be taken out, what should be added, just the paper, like a paper reviewer. Does it read well? Does it have any errors or something like this? So I would be perfectly happy with listing people as co-authors, graduates or undergrad students, or even high school teachers that say, I'm not yet at the level of actually providing text or having an opinion that is supported by, I'm not sure what hard data or hard, at least strong opinions. But if you say, I'd like to be listed as a co-author, and then your job would be look at over what we submit and then make sure that it's consistent with what you would expect from something where you would be listed as a co-author. But I'd be perfectly happy. I don't have a way to transport anybody there. In the past I used to, but this time I don't. So if you go to, you have to register by yourself and you'd have to, transportation and everything else would have to be everybody but for themselves. But once we get there, whoever gets there, we can present, I can let anybody present, or I can just we can carve the presentation in such a way that anybody can present as much as they want. Then you don't have to present. It could be one person presenting everything and everybody else in the audience. But I don't have
But can
money.
you support what is in the paper without being there? I mean, usually in scientific conferences, somebody presents a poster about the project that you're involved in. You not always at that conference, usually maybe your body is there who.
You don't have to come,
Yes,
exactly.
right.
So if you, let's say
Because
that's the situation is, I would be happy to look over the text and make sure there are no errors and it represents me. I'm comfortable with what it says, given that I will be listed as co-author, great. I can come to Montreal, no problem.
Yeah.
Right, so at least I go there. At least whoever else wants to go, Christian, I think we're gonna try to get money from the dean of students. Because they told me.
My professor is for the undergrads, so it will not be.
Undergrad, yeah, that's, oh, I see, but the Christian is an undergrad.
Yes.
So I spoke to Selma last year and I
Yeah,
said,
I
you know
think so.
how much money I put into the student organization and this, and I say, I'm out of money, so I'm sorry, I can't support anybody anymore. Oh, you have to talk to Paul, Paul has money, you just talk to Paul and Paul
I
will give you
think
money.
Paul has no money.
Yeah, well, okay, so the dean of undergraduate students, right, that's what we're trying to finance, Christian. I'll pay for myself, I have a small professional fund, development fund, whatever, fund. And at this point, so what would you like to do? If you want to be listed as a co-author, the minimum thing that you have to do is to read what we send and be comfortable with that, that's all. But then if you can come, no problem. If you want to be part of the session, absolutely excellent, no problem, again. And this is because we want to start it now and set a global variable so that CQT sees that we have in fact made this global impact little at this conference. So they can say, oh, so our efforts are meaningful. Besides the idea that yes, it's good to have a faculty learning community in Indiana, because there isn't one yet, okay? And Indiana is supposed to be south of Chicago, which has everything, and Indiana has nothing. But the idea is that if we put stuff in Indiana, which finally has a CQT, right, which has Purdue and Notre Dame actually constantly looking towards Chicago, rather than the rest of the state, and that's okay, right? Because it's so attractive. That big area is technologically so attractive. It's possible, in addition to being useful, to create this faculty learning community because these people did this summer, okay? That was the point that we were trying to do. So I'm just going to write here that Ahmad was here, and so was Blake, and so is Carla, and I put a star next to Carla because she's going to, she's interested, and Christina told me yesterday she would also be interested in this.
This is
And then
Blake. I would also be interested. If you want to put a star next to my name.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then Christian is already, and I have Elmar in the room. He told us that Paul doesn't have money,
No, I didn't say that.
For the dean of
He has money,
undergraduate
but I
students,
don't
his
know how
advisor.
it's up to you to get this money.
It's
I
his
know that he
advisor.
prays him with my PhD, which is great, but.
So he may know more than us.
No, I don't know anything. I don't know, he's.
We'll
he's a
see,
wrong
we'll see.
person. He's a professor.
That's what Selma told me. It's the other dean who says this.
So what's great? Well, and Paul is great too.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
They're both great.
So I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna say, as soon as possible, right? I'm going to rewrite the abstract and ask everybody to participate, and then tonight I have to submit it. If I don't submit it tonight and I submit tomorrow, I'm sure that they will still accept it. But I'd like to submit it tonight. And now at least we have 4 people plus me, so there's 5 people. That's great. So I will just want to make sure that I know, I'll email you guys before noon. What is the affiliation that you would like to be put on the paper? And that's what we have done so far. I'm going to go now and say, I'm gonna show you what I prepared today for super dense coding. Now I'm gonna go inside a team and say, here's the plan for today. So I'm gonna go through this step by step so that you can see that everything I do is working. And then, so you can say, oh, I can do it differently. So last time when I first showed matrices, Christina wrote back, says, I have done some coding with some functions that are slightly more general than yours. And that was absolutely true. So I just felt this is excellent. She could easily say a student of mine would then take this and immediately be excited about this particular aspect. And it's totally fine for us to have some expectations, which we'll then try to prove or disprove with data. So I'm installing Qiskit and the part that allows me to write LaTeX. Remember, super dense coding says, what? I'm not entirely sure what happened over there, but Acrobat was pointing out, so PDF or something. So in this case, we say, let's look for Holevo theorem. And it says this is a very important thing that says there is a bound. How much information can be known about the quantum state? Well, this is clearly not immediate. So we will have to basically, except I didn't look that up. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to find it in 3 seconds, but I'll provide a link later. IBM Qiskit. So in the lectures that he has, at some point, where are the videos? Basics of quantum information. I'm going to click here. That's him, but this is actually not, it's the written version of the videos. So start from the beginning, let's say. And so I think this is an important thing that I'm supposed to also link. This is less than 1 single system. There's no Holevo here, okay? When you go multiple systems, that's where the Holevo should show up because entanglement is being described. So if you are going to run it and close this, as you come here, maybe there is a place at some point where you can talk about Holevo's theorem. Is it possible to look it up like this? So basically the thing that says over here is that if you have a qubit, you can only transmit a bit. End of story. Nobody says anything about other entangled resources. Okay, now if I have other entangled resources, just the entangled resources also cannot be used to transmit information. But if you take your qubit and you that you want to send, and it's entangled with another qubit, that combination somehow creates some synergy, as I will show in a second. So if I search for Holevo, do I have it or not? Let's search entanglement in action. So these are the first few things. There's Holevo's theorem over here. Fitting the theme of the lesson, one reason why superdense coding is interesting is that it demonstrates a concrete and rather striking use of entanglement. They say, I'm gonna take Holevo's out. A famous theorem in quantum information theory, known as Holevo's theorem, implies that without the use of a shared entangled state, it is impossible to communicate more than 1 bit of classical information by sending a single qubit. So Olevo's theorem is more general and maybe even more hard to understand, as you saw from the page. But the consequence is clear cut. If you have a bit to transmit and you only have a qubit, you cannot transmit more than that bit. So in the qubit, you can put your bit and you can transmit it. If you have more than one bit, you cannot use that qubit. If you don't have any entangled resources. If you have an entangled pair, that also, as I showed you yesterday, cannot be used to transmit information. So separately, these guys don't work. But together, they are able to send 2 qubits. And this is how we are going to do it. So whole-level theorem, and it's in that video, and we found the script of the video. So now I'm going to come back here and I'm going to say, get rid of the output, and then let's install this guy. I'm going to copy this and put it over here. And once I imported it, I'm going to come to say I would like to use NumPy. Actually, I don't know when I'm using NumPy, so probably that's completely superfluous. But I definitely want to use Matplotlib to show things. So that line probably can be taken out, this one. But I'm just leaving it there because okay. So it's a function that is kind of written, I think, in the style of Christina's functions from when we first looked at matrices. I think I showed them like 3 seconds in class, and then I looked over them from what she sent me. So Alice sends us a function that says these are the bits that Alice is supposed to send. B2, B1. Notice that the order is reversed. So I have a circuit of 2, I put an H, and then I put a control knot, and I put a barrier, and now I'm going to put an X and a Z on those lines, only if the B2 and B1 say that they should be there. So I'm going to say, for example, run this, and that's the function. Once again, the function, the circuit is H on the top line, followed by a control knot with the control on the top. At least in our way we calculate that. B2 is 1, put an X on 0. And if B1 is 1, put a Z on 0 in that order. Then put a barrier and then come back with a control X and a H in reverse order. So I'm going to say that this is the entire circuit. And I would like to show you the circuit by doing this. So what I'm doing exactly as in the lecture with the matrices, I create a function, I call the function, this is the one for 0, 0. When I do 0, 0, I shouldn't have anything. So as you can tell, in between the barriers, there is nothing. But if I decide to put 1, 0, okay, then there is an X on the top line. And if I decide to put 0, 1, then the top line is the one that's going to be modified. And it's going to show up as a Z. Now, if I put a 1, 1, again, 0, 0 puts nothing, 1, 1 puts them both. This is the circuit. And we create a circuit for every one of the 4 possibilities that we are trying to say. You can tell that Q0 is what Alice is controlling, and Q1 is what Bob is controlling. Bob is not controlling anything in Q1, just receiving that. So Q0 says Alice does not have access to the Q1 line, but both lines are going to Bob. And Alice changes the line depending on what she wants to send. And as a result, these gates X and Z will appear or will not appear depending on the fact that the control is 1 or isn't 1. So the circuit changes, as I indicated. And it's always going to be the case that the control comes from the top to the bottom here, because that's how I build them. And 0 is the top line, and I put the Hadamard gates over there, and that's like the diagram that we did yesterday. So if you look at the way it looks, everything is good, and I'm going to come and say I'd like to see what the outcome is. So most of the times I don't want to do any kind of measurements. I just want to say we are not in the real world. In the real world, the state is not known. The nature doesn't give you the state. It allows you to measure according to some probabilities. But this is not the real world. This is simulated, so we have access to the state. Therefore, let me see the state. And the state is coming back exactly as we expected. If Alice is sending 1, 1, that's exactly what we are going to get over here. If Alice is sending 1, 0, then when I want to show what that is, I get a 1, 0. If Alice is sending 0, 1, then that's what the circuit looks. And when I say, are you getting the 0, 1 at the end? Yes. And if Alice is sending 0, 0, then the answer is exactly as we did yesterday when we quickly verified that these things are the inverse of themselves. And so out comes 0, 0. So that's exactly the proof of what we discussed. Now, we haven't yet calculated using the Misty State formalism. On the other hand, you have that information in the qubit set, and it's a simpler case. It's not as involved as Grover. There's a circuit is much simpler. You just have to do it 4 times. And now I'm asking myself, isn't it possible to actually have a circuit that is always the same, minus the state preparation? Now suddenly I'm shifting the goal to state preparation, and I'm going to show you something else. So Manning.com, and I'm going to come back here to the publishers, and I'm going to say sign in, no thanks, whatever that is, sign in. And I told you that Maria Mikhailova from Microsoft has started writing a book, not live projects. So what's my email address? I think it's this one. This is a book I'm going to publish, not publish, but post for you in Canvas, along with 2 more, and that's the end of things to. But this is an unfinished book. So, so I knew last year in Seattle when we had IEEE Quantum Week that she is writing a book. I said, when is it going to be in early access? Because that's what Manning does. And she said, I need to have 3 chapters, but she only had 2 at the time. So in April, she finished chapter 3, and that's available right now. So if you go by yourself, I think free, you get access to that chapter, these chapters, if you don't want to purchase anything. But I'll share this to you, except I'm going to put on the resources. So I'm going to go and say, I hope what this is my password. Let me see. And I will go to my, this is the book. So I'm going to look into the PDF. And I have now changed the emphasis to state preparation. Do you realize that so far, again, there's a limitation of what we are doing that so far has not affected us. Let me go here and say, open the folder. The limitation is that we're either putting 0 in input because we don't put anything, or we put an X and we turn it into a 1. So far we've been entering 0s and 1s. So what if people say, like in the case of teleportation, can you put just any state? You should be able to put any state, right? And the answer is we haven't done that yet. So she is addressing this in her book. I'm going to open it. That's what you're going to see when you are looking at it. There are only 3 chapters, and let's look at a table of contents that says to prepare quantum state. That's very good. So she constantly goes between Qiskit and QSharp on account that she's paid by Microsoft. So that's her livelihood. And she first contributed to the community. She's on the committee for QSEC listed over there. So she first contributed with quantum cutoffs, which I think you can find still for free. That she put together with Christas Vor. And these are like little things that you could go in a certain order to kind of like program the instruction. So these are the things that she, who's this guy? I don't know. She either copied them or something. So if I go over here, this is what she did. So I'd like to make sure that this is her stuff as opposed to somebody doing her stuff. Each tutorial. So yeah, so it's here, but I'm not sure exactly where they are right now. So next, it's kind of like Quantum Country, but done on the Microsoft side, and you have to know QSharp. Good, so we're gonna go back to the book that I opened, and I'm gonna say, my goal is, I don't know where the book is, it was somewhere over here. This is the book here. So my goal is to ignore the QSharp altogether, at least for this month or next month, and then focus on Qiskit. But actually for Monday, ignore QSharp completely and just do Qiskit. So how can I do quantum teleportation if I want to put a random state in the input? And she explains how, and I'm going to refer to this. See, I don't want 1, 0, or 0, 1. I want alpha, beta. Alpha, beta, where alpha and beta are complex numbers. So she has a bunch of explanations over here, and then of course the code in both Qiskit and QSharp. We're going to skip the QSharp, okay? But it's good to know that the only thing Microsoft has as far as quantum computing is concerned is this QSharp. They don't have the hardware. They run on Amazon and Bracket and IonQ hardware and Honeywell and so on. They are going after the hardest type of qubit to implement, which if they succeed, will be better than everybody else's. That's a topological quantum computing. And that's a notion that was created for the first time here at IU by two mathematicians here, and two Microsoft researchers. And there's a paper, 2002, and I can post that. So
So I think actually, when you listen to the video from Shore, he talks about topological quantum computing that I think it was this video.
yeah, but
That
I'm
is
gonna go paper, Michael, oh man, I lost some paper, the archive. Okay, so then the paper I showed you before. Oh, come on, wait, this one here, so. Kitaev was in Moscow at the time, now he's at Caltech. Friedman was in California, he is running the efforts of Microsoft in this. Michael Lassen and Zhengwen Wang, Indiana University. As you can tell over here. So this is the first paper ever about topological quantum computation. Two of mathematicians here at IU. Now Lassen is still here, Wang is not. Kitaev is in Caltech and this guy is at Microsoft. That's important. And we have this, notwithstanding huge efforts by Purdue, supported by Microsoft, to find ways of producing these kind of qubits, okay? But it didn't originate there. It originated here at IU, which remains, I mean, it's not that Purdue is better or worse, but this is the kind of stuff that happens here. So some good ideas, and then there's no way to actually finalize them. Well, nobody cares, it's all theoretical. And Purdue is leading. Purdue is leading this effort with Microsoft. Mike Manfra over there is doing this. So I'm going to close this, but it's good to have IU doing something and being involved in some fashion. That's people here are relatively proud of that. So I'm done with this. I'm going to post a book, and now I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to say, after I do some exercises, right? I'm going to say, is there a possibility for me to create one single circuit? And the answer is yes. And here's this, all in one. I say all-in-one will require some measurements. Let me explain this function to you and show that it runs, and then explain what it means and how it could be maybe improved or cleaned up. So all-in-one is going to say I have two qubits, and I'm going to create a quantum circuit that will be 4 inputs, but 2 of them are always set to 0, and the other 2 are what I want to consider as classical inputs. Then those 2 that are always 0 go through the circuit with controls from the top, and I will basically measure them. So that's why I have 4 lines and then 2 outputs. So put the X if it's necessary, because I will only enter 0 in and 1. So this is the preparation of the input state, which at this point is not general, because I really want it to be classical. So do you want a 1 or a 0 on B2? And if you want a 1 for B2, then put an X on 0. Same thing with B1. If B1, which is a bit that Alice is sending, is supposed to be 1, then don't forget to flip the 0 that comes in by default on line 1. I'm going to put a barrier which is going to be there only if I flip at least one of the incoming 0 bits. And then I have, for the lines 2 and 3, there's a Hadamard, a control, a barrier, and control X and control Z, which are there always, but the controls that come from line 1 and line 0 might turn them on or off. And if they are off, the line is empty. So there's a barrier, and then the control X comes, and then the H, and we are finished. No measuring, okay? So this is a different function, which produces a circuit where the only part that's changing is the input. So I'm going to come back over here and say, could you show me how the circuit looks if I'm going to send 1, 1? And you can tell that if I want to send 1, 1, this part is the circuit, which is always going to be like this. This is the 2 lines that we had in the previous situation. And all I'm doing here is I'm sending a 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1 that go and control these 2 gates. And if the 1 is here, then this guy is active. And if the X is not here, then the 0 comes and says you do not have a control, you don't have a NOT. So I'm going to come and say, for example, make this slightly smaller, go up a little bit. And what if I want to send 1, 0? Then, as you can tell, the circuit doesn't change, but I'm sending a 0 on Q1. That means that the control Z no longer acts. if I send a 0, 1, then I have the state preparation, which is super small here, and it's classical in some sense, because it's 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1. We don't have arbitrary qubit, but we should do that for the teleportation. This one says you have a 0 coming in for this control node. So the control says you are not active. Therefore, this is missing. This thing is invisible right now. The one that's coming on the Q1 because of the X, because the original input is by default 0, is going to come and activate the control Z, and it's going to say unactive. So if a 1 is coming, then there will be a phase. So again, Alice is going to set these two depending on what she wants to send. And these lines should stop here. They don't go to Bob, okay? They are just for the control of this thing. And in some sense, you should go, and the teleportation has the same kind of setup, except it's, I said dual. But if you come here and you look at the picture that comes with this, what? I have to sign up or something? Oh, God.
It wasn't the right.
Oh, I should be, yes, right. So I'm gonna come back over here and say, look at this. What is here at the end? A classical bit comes and controls the X and the Z gate. They have the same mechanism, so you don't have to assume that this is going to go to Bob. No, it's going to control gates on the wire that goes to Bob. And the same thing is happening over here. So I'm coming over here and I said, I did 1, 1, and I did 1, 0, 1. Let me do a 1, 0. I think maybe I've done that too. And now I do 0, 0. So when I do 0, 0, remember that there is no X in the input. Therefore, the barrier that you see over here will not even be drawn. That's the circuit with those two gates in the middle not acting. They actually are, they act as identity functions on account that Q0 and Q1, which is what she wants to send, is 0, 0. Therefore, they are saying, we don't do anything. We're here, but we don't do anything. So I'm going to come back to this guy and I'm going to say, minimize this a little bit. How about running this so I can determine what's happening in, no, cancel. What's happening? Close and put this here. So I'd like to see what happens when I send whatever I just did. So 0, 0. I want to do 0, 0. So for this circuit, can I see all four as a state? Yes. But what does that mean? The first two are going to be what Bob receives. The other two shouldn't be there. They're just the controls that Alice pushes. Okay.
The other one.
So I don't like those in the output. But I mean, and I also shouldn't have qubits over here. I should have classical lines that come, control the gates, and stop. All right. But I put 2 qubits and I put 0s or 1s on them, and these wires are basically in the air. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to say, what else did I do? I'm going to introduce measurements. I don't want you to think that I have to get a state of 4 qubits and then that's what I'm doing, and therefore I'm sending 2 qubits because I have 4. That's not the case. And I'm going to only measure the last 2. So finally, measurement needs to be introduced here so that we can be sure that we're not cheating or anything. This is all in one, except this time it's being rewritten so that it has a measure for the last 2 qubits. And I'm going to say, what does it look now if I'm going to send a 1, 1? And so we're finished. We just want to show how this works. So when I'm sending a 1, 1 and I draw, I have these 2 measurements at the end. This is what I'm interested in. This is 1 and this is 0. So it's the 1 and the 0 is how they are reported. So then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, I'm supposed to install this because I never thought about doing any measurements up until now. So that would take 30 seconds or something. And then as I'm putting these others, I took this from week number 2 when we measured Bell states. And I say, get a simulator that will hopefully help us with accounts. And while this is ongoing, that I think it's finished already, yeah, why don't I just come here and say, get rid of this output and run this, and it says, you're ready to go. Go ahead and measure. What am I measuring? I'm measuring what I said I would do. She's sending a 1, 1. And we are measuring only these 2 because they both go to Bob. But she's only controlling one of them. But Bob is receiving them both. And they are entangled. And I'm coming with here and I'm going to say, create a circuit for that we discussed, print it. Well, we've done that already, but let's do it one more time. Come on. Where am I? Right here. And that's the circuit that we are going to measure. It has the tools for being measured, and I'm going to say, please show me the histogram. What answers do you get? Now, the theory is that doesn't matter how many times I'm doing, I'm always going to get exactly what she said. She said 1, 1, that's what you're going to get. So this exercise is, the circuit is run quickly 1,000 times, and every single time we get a 1, 1. Then I'm going to come back and do the same loop that I did before. How about she's sending 1, 0? Then the circuit looks like this. Well, how about I go and check? Well, every single time I'm sending 1, 0. So consistently, what I'm sending is what I'm receiving. So I have proved essentially that if I have 1 qubit from Alice to Bob, and that qubit is entangled with another qubit that Bob has, then Alice is able to send 2 bits of information. So I guess we did on 1, 0 already, right? Yeah. Let's do 0, 1 and 0, 0, and then that's the end of the lecture. And I'm going to go and start writing messages to people to determine who wants to be part of the paper. And then, because I have to send the abstract, I really am sorry. I thought it was Friday of next week. And who knows, they may have meant it that way. But in the message it said 19, so I'm not going to take chances. Because so many people are involved. So 0, 0, and when I calculate, I get 0, 0 every single time. That's, I mean, I don't have to do it 1,000 times, but if I were to do it, then I would get 0, 0 every single time. So I have proved that superdense coding is in fact a mechanism by which I can send 2 bits of information using 1 bit. That's the purpose. That's the perspective that Alice has. She only has 1 qubit. It's true that one is entangled with another qubit that Bob has access to, and Bob receives 2 qubits. The entangled one that nobody touched, and the one that Alice is feeding with information. So Bob receives 2 bits of information. But it is a little bit surprising in some sense that Alice is not using more than 1 qubit, and the only thing that Alice has access to is a pair, EPR pair, which we mentioned yesterday cannot transmit information, but in combination with this qubit that she has, the pair itself is going to behave as shown. So there's only 1 pair here involved, but it does provide information because Alice is controlling 1 side of the pair, and she's doing what she's doing with the controls on the. See, if you're not comfortable with these extra lines, then you can go back to the beginning and say, for everything that I'm sending, whatever that was, if she's sending, you know, whatever she's sending, the thing is a circuit with gates that appear as part of her message. So she can only control 1 side. And so that means she puts or she doesn't put those gates. Now, it's not as hard as it might seem to unpack the circuit and put the gate in there. All she has to do, as we indicate over here, is to just monitor the controls to the gates. Because if you don't put a 1, then the gate still there will act as identity. That's the point. So it would have been better if I could have this as classical lines that stop with the control, like what we had over here. See? So classical lines that go into the and control the gates, and that's it. So maybe we'll make the change. Maybe we won't. I mean, for next week. Next week we'll do teleportation and then GAC gate. And this today we're trying to do the paper. So would you please put me on for a 2 p.m. meeting with you? I absolutely will do it just now. C29012. And I'm gonna go office hours, and I'm gonna go for all the high school teachers. The usernames are made up, so this would be first 8 characters, and today is Friday, so I have Austin at 12:30, and at 2 o'clock it's going to be Carla. So anybody can do this by themselves, but if you want me to do it for you, that's totally fine. I can do it just like I did now. And that's basically it. So sorry, we are like 4 minutes late. I'm gonna follow up with email for everybody. Anybody, any questions? All right, then no questions. I will be in touch within 3 or 4 hours, everybody, by email. And we'll have a perfect abstract and title and list of authors tonight. I'm gonna stop it here. I was thinking, oh, I could show you where I go to put more authors and stuff, but it wouldn't make any sense. First of all, we are late, and second, I have to read more of that message to make sure that I make the changes in the right place. So, all right, have a very good Friday, and we'll be in touch if necessary. Yeah. So I'm gonna stop sharing, and I'm going to close the chat, and I'm going to stop recording.